And just like that, things are back to normal.
Not really.
According to everybody else, things are back to normal now.
No, they're not.
What do you mean?
Who's everybody else?
I mean, I guess the country is acting like things are back to normal, or at least we're approaching that.
Yeah, I see it getting there over the summer, but it's not like a light switch flipped and
Not in Florida.
there's no more pandemic.
Not in Texas.
Well, luckily we don't live there.
Look, I'm just saying, we're approaching the normal street, and we take a right on it.
Yeah. Well, it felt like a pretty normal weekend for us.
That's what I'm saying.
Now that we're fully vaccinated and a lot of our friends and family are fully vaccinated, we were able to have some gatherings that felt normal.
Okay.
And with the weather being beautiful, it was, still be outside and everything.
There's a lot of rain.
A little bit today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways. All right. So welcome to While She's Napping. I am Adam.
And I'm Cindy.
So we had some good feedback regarding the feminism episode last week. And a lot of that had to do with some of the points that you made. And in fact, we had another podcast that I guess primarily discusses feminism.
Yes.
Giving you props. And we had someone on Reddit not come at me, but I don't know if he was or she was reinforcing or defending or, I don't know, investigating more over the males working at daycare point that I made.
Oh, I didn't even see this.
I sent it to you. Yeah,
you did?
Yeah.
I don't remember this.
Yeah. The person was like, I think there are layers to this and the reason why.
Oh, this was on YouTube, not Reddit.
No, it was Reddit.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So shout out to that person.
Yeah.
Anyways, I defend that. I still think it's weird as fuck.
And we also had some feedback from one of our close friends that you just weren't picking up what I was putting down. It took us forever to get to the point.
I'm picking it up. I'm just saying, you're saying, oh, if a woman does a man's job, it's cool. But if a man does a woman's job, it's why are you stooping down to that level? It's not about stooping down to the level. It comes from an area of concern, because if a man was doing something like knitting, or a man was doing something like, I don't know, what, some other thing that's primarily ascribed to women, I wouldn't care. It wouldn't bother me. I wouldn't think less of that man. I don't think less of this hypothetical man working at the daycare. I'm just concerned.
I know that's what you think.
No, it's what I feel.
Okay. We don't need to go back into it.
I would be concerned.
I feel like, that being said, we titled the episode Scratching the Surface of Feminism for a reason, because we did end up using a couple of very specific examples to try to illustrate a larger concept. But there's a lot of other things that have to do with feminism that we didn't even go near. We didn't even touch.
Listen.
So we can always follow up.
My fellow kings out there that reside in America, let me know how you would feel if your children or child was attending a daycare and 3 or 4 men were part of the daycare staff, primary caretakers there. This may be different in other parts of the world, in, say, Europe or whatever, wherever. And it may be common for a man to be working at a child care center. It is not common here. So I just want my fellow dads out there to come at me and say, yeah, this is weird. Because I think I'm not in the territory where that's the minority here.
I didn't say that you were. I was addressing the deeper reasons behind it.
Okay. I just think it's weird as fuck. All right, so watch our number one listener that we don't know be a man that works in a child daycare center and just unsubscribe.
Or come at you.
Oh, no, he's not going to come at me. Come at me, bro. Whatever. It's all good. All right. So today we are going to discuss it. This was on the fly, sort of.
Yeah.
We are shedding these masks, maybe. apparently. We as in the American people, not necessarily you and I.
We as in the vaccinated American people.
Yeah, sure.
Yet you have to be specific.
Well, I don't need to be specific because we know they're going to claim vaccination status.
Correct. But don't promote that
I'm
behavior.
not promoting it, but we have to acknowledge the obvious here.
Okay. I mean, that's a big part of the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about it. It came sort of as a shock, and I don't know if you remember talking about it with me. I think we were discussing it on Wednesday. Yeah, it was Wednesday, because I picked up our child from daycare, ironically enough, and on the way home, I was talking to you about somehow we got on the topics of the protocols and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I said, don't be surprised if in the next coming weeks or months they're gonna eliminate the mask protocols, because it's not a mandate, right? It was never a mandate.
You mean
Nationally,
on a state level?
Nationally.
I
think it was just for federal employees.
It was a recommendation,
right?
But it was each state, I think, was responsible for creating their own.
Okay,
rules.
So yeah, I said don't be surprised,
right? Because like Texas and Florida lifted it, and the federal government was like, "Please don't do that,"
right?
But they had no authority to tell them otherwise.
And 2 days later, rather, here we are.
Yes, but they didn't lift the mask mandate. That's what I'm saying. Like, it kind of matters because the recommendation, even though, yes, obviously there are going to be people who abuse it and who go unmasked even though they're unvaccinated, but that's not the intention. And it's not what it says. The mask mandate is not lifted.
I guess. All right. So here's where things get muddy for me. So what I want to do is in the first half, we'll just loosely discuss this. In the second half, I want to talk about our concerns as parents.
Okay.
But here's what I'd like to believe. I'd like to believe that the CDC and or the WHO and or the scientists that are ahead of this and really studying this, virologists, whatnot, they know this. They cannot.
Right.
It's sort of like what happened here in Rhode Island when the vaccines first rolled out, and they said we're not going to check whether or not you have a compromised immunodeficiency or whatnot. We're just it's on our system.
Yeah, as far as whether or not you were eligible.
And then you hear we know people are fucking breaking the rules,
and they had more doses than they could give out.
We're not going to encourage it, but we sort of want this to happen. We want people to
shots
break
in
the
arms,
rules, right?
Yeah.
I think something similar is happening here.
Maybe. My frustration is that if that's the case, I don't understand. Well, so I guess my initial frustration was if that's the case and the CDC fully understands that there's going to be non-compliance amongst unvaccinated people, and they're going to just go maskless because they think, why not? I don't have to tell anybody or prove my vaccination status. I just won't wear a mask. Assuming that they know that that's going to happen, they must still have felt comfortable to make that recommendation. And I don't understand why, if that's the case, that it is truly safe for us to go about our business with unmasked, unvaccinated people in public places, then why not say that? Why not say we've reached a point where this, like, if you're fully vaccinated, or if, like, again, we're going to talk about this specifically in the second half, but with kids under 12 not being eligible, me as a parent, I want to feel safe, like, quote unquote, returning to normal life, including my kid.
Let's not jump the gun on that. We can just substitute that with people that are still immunocompromised.
Sure,
right?
Or even people who were vaccinated but are immunocompromised, who might not mount as robust of a response to the vaccine,
right,
and may still be vulnerable.
Because I think when people hear, hey, we've reached... So my theory, and I've said this to you before, my personal theory is right about now, approximately 50% of the American population has at least one dose.
Mm-hmm.
So we can assume in 2 weeks' time, at least 50% of the population has been fully vaccinated. Or, sorry, we could assume that in a month, right?
Yeah.
So by 4th of July, we can say, okay, probably 50% of the population within the US has been fully vaccinated. Of course, there's going to be overlap. Of course, there's going to be some cross-pollination between these two groups. But we can also say that those that are not vaccinated, refuse to be vaccinated, there's a good chance, based on the nature of this virus, that they may have had it and not realized it, may have had it and been completely asymptomatic, may have had it and thought it was just a cold.
Right.
Therefore, they built up a natural immune response to the virus. We'll say maybe that consists of maybe 20% of those not vaccinated right now. If we assume that, which is a dangerous assumption, but if we assume that, we've pretty much hit that 70% threshold, which is the herd immunity threshold that Fauci was saying approximately 70% of the population needs to be vaccinated in order for there to be herd immunity. I think that's where we're at. I think we're at a 50% vaccination status, a 20%, those that aren't vaccinated, 20% of that group has built up an immunity, which couples all together.
That doesn't equal 70%.
How?
Because 20% of the 50%.
No. I'm saying 20% of those that
of the whole population
haven't been vaccinated.
Right, which is 50% of the population. Correct?
Yes.
So 20% of that 50% doesn't equal 20% of the entire population. It equals 10% of the entire population.
No. So I'm saying 50% of the population has been vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
You put that aside, there's 50% left. Of that 50%,
Yep.
20% probably had COVID and built a immunoresponse to it.
Correct, which is 10%
So
of
now
the
that
entire
means-
population.
Now that means 70% of the population has...
No,
How?
math.
Oh, okay. I guess I don't know what I'm talking about.
If the whole population... Okay, math tangent.
Yeah, sure.
If the whole population is 100 people,
Yeah.
50 people are vaccinated.
Yep.
50 people are unvaccinated.
Yep.
Of the 50 unvaccinated people, 20 have had COVID and have some immunity.
Mm-hmm.
That's
70 people have an immunoresponse to the virus and 30 don't.
no, because 20%, you said, sorry, 20% of the 50 is 10. 20% of 50 is 10.
I meant an
Because
additional...
if it was 20 out of 50, that would be almost half of the people.
I'm saying an additional 20%. Probably.
Okay, so you think half of the unvaccinated population in America has an immunity, has had COVID?
Probably has had COVID and not know it. There was a time when Fauci was estimating 50% of the... Before a vaccine, the estimate was 50% of the population was probably asymptomatic and didn't even know they had it.
Okay.
That's what I'm
All right,
saying.
I just got confused by your math.
No, sorry. That was-
I don't mean to
Tangent
derail
aside.
your
I
train
think
of
we're
thought.
there. I think based on nothing, just my guess, I sincerely believe we were at...
We're
the
at or
herd-
close. And we don't know exactly what herd. It's not, again, it's not like
No. You're right.
it was a range. I mean, people were saying anywhere from 50% to 90% would get us to herd immunity. So we don't really know. And the thing that I'm wondering is if that is the case, and that's why the CDC felt comfortable making this recommendation right now, I'm surprised because it doesn't really seem like we have seen the results of that, of reaching herd immunity. Like, yeah, cases have been on a decline and things look better, but I feel like once we've reached herd immunity, it's going to take some time to see the results of that happening and
Right.
really see cases like tank and drop off and hospitalizations and deaths. And I mean, maybe that's happening in enough places at a local scale that they feel that it's generally safe. I mean, I don't know.
I think, and again, that's based on nothing but a guess. I think the reason why they can't say this is, first of all, I don't think it's measurable because of the amount of asymptomatic people that probably have had it and built a natural immune response to it, and they can't calculate that. They
Right,
can't
but we also don't
quantify
know how
that.
long that lasts. They know that
I think they estimated about 6 months.
they don't really know, but the response you have from vaccination is more robust than from natural
Of course.
infection.
Yeah.
So the point, I think they probably don't want to use that as part of the calculation because they still want those people who have had COVID to get vaccinated.
Oh, no
because
doubt.
Right. So maybe that's a strategy of not including that number in the calculation.
Yeah. Well, and it's almost impossible. If people are
You don't really know.
asymptomatic, you can't quantify that.
But I don't want to rely on that.
No, I get it. I just think the reason why they can't put this out there is that, just a guess, it may offer up a false sense of security for those that are immunocompromised, and then they'll be like, oh, okay, shed the mask and get it and get seriously ill, and they'll say, what the fuck, CDC? You said it was cool. And I think when people hear this, it's what in their minds they translate it to, oh, this means 100% risk-free. And that's still not the case, even if we did hit the herd immunity threshold.
Right.
Even if 90% of the population was vaccinated.
It's never 100%.
It's never 100.
Right.
So I think that's what, because this is such a flip of the switch to normalcy, people are thinking, okay, the pandemic is over. Cool. COVID's gone. Right.
Yeah. One of the other thing I feel like wasn't made clear is what that recommendation from the CDC actually means in terms of what you're required to do in certain places. Like, one analogy I saw that made sense to me was like, you can, if you're visiting a friend's house, you can go barefoot, right, in their backyard, or you can walk around their house with no shoes on, but you can't go to the grocery store without shoes on. Like, the mask is the same thing because it's a public health thing. So grocery stores or local governments can still enforce their mask mandate as their policy. The CDC recommendation is just a recommendation. It doesn't supersede local mandates.
No.
So it's going to take time for local governments and states to catch up to the recommendation. I think most of them are going to adopt it because I feel like they would get way too much criticism from an economic standpoint if they felt like that was, although, I mean, the mask isn't stopping people from using the businesses as long as things are operating at 100% capacity. I don't feel like there's a lot of an economic argument to be made, but I can understand why local governments wouldn't want to do something that's in contrast to the CDC recommendation.
Whoops, hit the microphone. Going back to your point, though, about those that are unvaccinated, this definitely gives them a free pass. But, and again, for us personally, all we really have to worry about is our kid at this point, which we'll get to. Not that that's fuck. It's just a kid.
Yeah, there's that minor detail.
No, I'm not. I don't feel that way at all. Obviously, but by and large, they had to have seen this coming. People are gonna anti-maskers. Sorry, are going to say, "Well, fuck, I'm claiming vaccination status. I'm good."
Yeah, and so actually, something I just learned. I mean, I had never really taken the time to look into it, but this move by the CDC has prompted this conversation. And I learned that, people always say, oh, you can't violate HIPAA. You can't ask, like, if you go into the grocery store and you're not wearing a mask, people always use HIPAA as their defense to say, well, the grocery store or the business owner can't ask me my vaccination status because it's a violation of my privacy under HIPAA. It's not, apparently. HIPAA only applies in healthcare settings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that. But that's not the way the general public talks about healthcare privacy and your medical information. Apparently, it's totally legit for, this is my understanding. If there's people who out there who know more, correct me because I'm learning as I go. This is news to me. That it's totally within the rights of the business when it's a public health measure to ask you your vaccination status. If that's the policy of the business and if that's the mandate by the local government that you do not have to wear a mask if you are vaccinated, but you do have to wear a mask if you are not, it is within the rights of the business to ask you your vaccination status. And the only proof that we have are the cards because we're not using a passport system.
But, okay, that is incredibly tedious to do.
It is. I'm not saying that businesses
in like a
would
grocery store and stuff.
I know. I'm not saying that they would go and above. I don't. It's going to depend on the business owner, but I feel like most of them are not going to go above and beyond to do that, and they're not paid enough, honestly.
They're not going to do it at all. They can't. It's right now. I feel especially local businesses are in such dire straits.
Yeah, they need the business.
They're not
They're not going to have
turn
that fight.
away.
I guess my point simply is for anyone who's unvaccinated and using that argument, it's wrong. It's not.
Yeah.
You don't have that right
Well,
to not follow public health mandates because you think it violates your privacy. It's not a thing.
right. I guess what I want to sort of shift to here is I want to acknowledge that throughout this entire pandemic and many of the people that we know, the attitude and the guidance for this has always been trust science. And, we see this all the time, especially for those, and I don't want to get political, but those that identify as Democrats or liberal on the left, their argument has always been trust science. They've made t-shirts and logos and stuff saying, I trust science, I got my vaccine, blah, blah, blah. Now the CDC is saying it's safe. And, if I understand because we're worried about those that are unvaccinated, but
Correct.
I'm saying for a personal level, if you are vaccinated, you really don't have anything to worry about.
Correct. No one is arguing that. Like I do trust the CDC's recommendation at its face. Like vaccinated people not wearing a mask makes sense to me. There's plenty of data behind that now to demonstrate that that's safe. My issue is for unvaccinated people, like our child, is no longer going to be protected because there's a good chance that there are going to be unvaccinated people unmasked around her at any given time. And unless the community spread is so low that it's basically like a herd immunity situation, that makes me anxious.
I get it. And I think there are many things about this that are going to make people anxious and already starting. But again, if we're trusting the science, the CDC has said, and there have been other independent studies that have reinforced this as well, it is near non-transmissible outside.
I know.
It's
and
near
that's why
zero.
I'm grateful this is happening at the beginning of summer where
I
we
think
live.
that's why.
Well, and because cases tend to be lower in the summer because of the warmer weather and people are outside and whatever. But like, I'm saying things like we wanted to re-enroll her in dance classes or even just have her be able to like run into the store with me. I mean, I know if I've gotten very used to avoiding that.
So my argument for that is if we didn't have this mandate lifted or suggested by the CDC, we still wouldn't do those things.
I know that. But I'm saying that we're not everybody. There are other people who do bring their, have no choice but to bring their kid into Target with them or whatever, for whatever reason. But for some of these other optional things, like now I'm like, okay, do I want her indoors with like 10 other kids? The kids should have to still wear masks because they're unvaccinated.
According to the guidelines,
but there's going to be parents in there with them, teachers, whatever. If they're not vaccinated, there's no way for me to know that. And they're going to be interacting with my kid indoors in close contact.
Are we talking about for like a dance
class, for example?
We just don't do it.
I know. That's my point. I'm saying, but if this hadn't happened, I probably would have felt comfortable doing that, knowing that people still had to wear masks.
No. If this mask mandate wasn't lifted, she wouldn't be enrolled in dance classes this year. We wouldn't do it.
It's an example.
I hear what you're saying, and I guess the grocery store thing makes more sense because that's more of a necessity. But I think this is where the Biden administration, I feel, is less extreme left and more middle, and this is the moderate side coming out saying you have to sort of govern yourself when it comes to this. You have to evaluate your risk potential.
Correct. And my point is that being in this situation now raises the level of risk for people who cannot be vaccinated.
I get
because you can still wear your mask and give yourself some protection, but if people who are unable to get vaccinated now have to second guess anyone they come into contact with who's not wearing a mask, they don't know if they're vaccinated. It's a lot to process where it came out of nowhere. We weren't prepared for this.
I think those that are immunocompromised, I think this is a bigger blow.
Especially since, if you're immunocompromised and you got vaccinated, but you're still concerned about your level of immunity.
Or if you can't be vaccinated, I think that's worse, right? Because there's a small percentage.
There are certain conditions, yeah, right. I think.
So
but
I think, and this is no disrespect to any fellow parents that are listening, we are in this position. But I do think those that are immunocompromised can't get the shot. I think this is a much bigger deal than those that are worried about bringing their kid into Target. And again, that's not to diminish it, but that necessarily based on statistics and data when it comes to kids isn't a life or death thing. With those that are severely immunocompromised, it very much could be.
Or even, I've even read that for elderly people, I mean, obviously the vaccine has made a huge difference in how severely impacted anyone is, but the people who are most vulnerable or tend to be older, that sort of those people also may not mount as robust of an immune response. And even if they're vaccinated, could still get very sick. It's unlikely, but it's my whole point is that it's just, I feel like we were just on the cusp of like being ready and like starting to understand how to people again and how to like move back into some sense of normalcy.
Right.
And I feel like this just like threw us in like head first with a lot of other anxiety around it.
I just don't feel, on a personal level, I don't have that level of anxiety. I don't. And maybe it's largely because I'm vaccinated, but even, and we'll get to it after the break, but even with our child, because it's the warmer season here, and because the transmission rate outdoors is near zero, remember, trust science, yay science, okay, science says this, I'm not concerned. I'm not, because, and right now the estimate time frame rather is around September when children her age group can be vaccinated. It, generally
before we
speaking,
move back indoors,
it's still warm in September and even October, so I'm not worried about it. I'm not. Like, the majority of the shit that she's going to be doing with us would be outdoors anyway. And so personally, this is just me speaking, if she was around an unvaccinated person outdoors, I'm not worried at all.
Okay, but that's not the recommendation from the CDC.
I know. I'm going to follow the guidelines. I'm saying from me.
Yeah, but you keep saying like trust science, trust the CDC, trust what they say. Then why don't you just trust them? But they're saying for a reason that unvaccinated people should still wear a mask even outdoors.
Yes, I get it. I just have a hard time reconciling the transmission rate outdoors near zero, but still wear a mask outdoors. I think
it
it's
also
silly.
has something to do with the variants and the fact that we still don't really understand. And the more people who remain unvaccinated, the more chances there are for it to continue to mutate and have new variants that come out that right now, so far, it looks like the vaccines are effective against all the variants that we know of.
Right.
But the more and more this happens, the more likely it becomes that a new variant will arise that our vaccines are not effective against. And then even the vaccinated population becomes at risk.
I'm not saying it doesn't have the potential to.
So I think they're just being cautious because we don't know.
Okay.
I think that's the right thing to do.
I'm looking at the rate of transmission last summer, the data that we have, and it was so low.
I know, but the new variants are more contagious.
I don't know that that's true outdoors.
No, I don't know either specifically, but I mean, logically speaking, if it's more transmissible, it would be more transmissible in any setting.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. I'm
saying it's more transmissible than another, like the original COVID is outside.
Yes.
The variants are more transmissible.
I don't know that it's true that they're more transmissible outside. I think it's easier to catch indoors.
Of course. Yes.
I still think those
variants... It takes less time to transmit it too. It used to be like 15 or 30 minutes or something. Now they're saying it's like a couple of minutes.
Right, but I still think those variants are near zero outside.
Maybe.
That's what I'm saying. So like on a personal level, it doesn't worry me. Do I still want an unvaccinated person wearing a mask around my child? Yes, because it sets a precedent for those that are unvaccinated outdoors. I personally think I don't think it's necessary if the science is suggesting that it's near zero. That's my personal sort of evaluation of this, which means nothing. I'm not a healthcare expert, but if we're harping on this notion of trust the science, I don't understand why we can't trust this when it comes to the science.
So then do you think the CDC's recommendation is going against the science?
I think the CDC is making these. I saw the chart, and if you're vaccinated, you can do this, in a picture of someone without a mask. If you're not vaccinated, all mask. I think it's just they want a blanket statement. Hey, just wear a mask if you're not vaccinated.
It's easier for communication.
Yes, just wear a mask, and it encourages those to get vaccinated.
Yeah, I heard that theory too, that it's like an incentive.
Yes.
For I don't know about that. I mean, I think that might be true for people who are just like have just been lax about it, or they haven't prioritized getting their vaccine because they feel like they're personally not at high risk and whatever. It's just something on their to-do list that they haven't gotten to yet. I don't think that this will incentivize people who are like very opposed to getting the vaccine. They're not going to care because those are the ones that are just going to go out without a mask and just say that they're vaccinated because they don't want to get vaccinated and they don't want to wear a mask.
Right.
So maybe it will. And that being said, I do think that the majority of the people who have yet to get vaccinated fall into the first category of just being lackadaisical about it, not anti-vax.
Maybe.
I think so. Because I think it's like the young population, it's like millennials who are just, they think that they're not.
I'd be interested to see. It would surprise me if there wasn't a seed of doubt about the reaction, or the common thing you hear is, the whole guinea pig thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
And
it's
I don't
easy
think
to debunk that.
No, I hear you. I don't necessarily think that type of surface level worry about the vaccine is necessarily geared towards being anti-vax. I think that's more of, I just want to see what happens first.
Sure.
And it's not that I'm not going to get it, but I just don't want to be rushed, because if in their minds, their proper reasoning, if something were to happen, I avoided that,
Maybe.
first round of tests.
Sure.
When that's their reasoning, where they don't.
When really the testing happened in the clinical trials.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just think there's some sort of hesitation or fear when it comes to something that is, let's face it, relatively new.
Right.
I mean,
but so in that case, maybe the incentive to not have to wear a mask would help push someone.
Yes, that's
who's
what I'm
in that
thinking.
situation. Maybe. Yeah, we'll just have to see.
And that doesn't mean that I think the CDC is doing something sneaky or cerebral here. I just think
No, it's logical. It's we can all stop wearing masks once we are all vaccinated and protected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't have this level of concern. If this was the winter, I'd be very concerned.
Yeah. Right.
I'd be extremely concerned. But because it's during the warmer weather where case rates were super low in comparison to when they were high, and this is obviously people were still getting it in the summer and the warmer months. I'm not disregarding that, but in comparison to the winter,
right?
They were
and last
so
spring of
low.
2020, and
when
then
it first came in,
right? Yeah.
But I mean, at least here in Rhode Island, people were still sort of bundled together at the beach. And again,
outdoor parties, cookouts, whatever were still happening.
This is not a criticism of any sort of protest or anything, but there were no reported outbreaks when it came to any marches or protests.
People were wearing masks.
Some, majority were.
At protests? Yeah, majority.
But there were still some that weren't. Sure. When Joe Biden got elected, there were celebrations outdoors. No clusters of cases there.
A lot of masks.
But still, I'm not disregarding that. I'm saying some people weren't.
I know, but if we're going to compare it, yeah, I agree with you. I know that the outdoor is infinitely more safe than interacting indoors.
That's my only point.
But I'm saying, like, if you're going to compare outdoors this summer when people are going to be unmasked to outdoors last summer when people were still kind of, well, I don't know. I guess it depends on the situation.
That's what I'm saying.
But I'm saying masks were very much a thing last year.
Yeah. I just think coupled with those that have the vaccine outside, coupled with those that aren't vaccinated going outside, it's like the majority wearing masks during protests and some that weren't. I feel like it's going to even out.
Maybe.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not worried. And I guess that's what I wanted to harp on, there is a sense of anxiety when it comes to lifting these protocols. And I certainly understand, but I don't know that it's radical to say we sort of have to trust the science that has been, by and large, correct about a lot of these things most of the time.
Yeah.
That's all. You seem upset.
No, it's just because I feel like I keep saying I do trust the science. The science is sound with the recommendation. It's my issue is with those who won't follow it, and that does not align with the science. Having unmasked, unvaccinated people all over the place is not following the science. And that's my concern.
Well, I guess we'll see. If there's was it a fourth wave that we're maybe approaching? If there's a fourth wave, then we'll know. Yeah, then we'll know. But we'll see. All right, let's take a pause here. On the flip side, I do want to talk about what it's going to be like to be parents during this. Hang tight. So I'm someone who has dealt with anxiety in, other contexts pre-pandemic. And I think we talked a little bit about this on, different ways that it's manifested since COVID, and then also after the miscarriage that we had last year. And now being pregnant after that loss, and that anxiety is like a very special breed. And I feel like the anxiety that comes along with COVID is a special breed. And then there's like general social anxiety that people have. It's like there's a lot of different forms that anxiety can take. And so I've been working through certain types of my anxieties. And now for me personally, the timing of this one is a challenge, because I feel like I just got to the point like in the pregnancy where I can let go of that anxiety. And I was just starting to feel the COVID anxiety diminish because I'm now fully vaccinated. And having the summer ahead of us, like you were saying, being able to be outside and everything all the time. But now I feel like the anxiety is, I can't get there yet because of the anxiety that I feel for our daughter. Our child. Yeah.
Yes. And I also realize that, yes, kids are much lower risk than other people in the population, people with underlying conditions or people that are older. But we also talked about on a previous episode, personal experience that we have, a loved one of ours, a child got very, very ill from having COVID and developing MIS-C, the inflammatory syndrome that children can get. And not to like fear monger or anything, but those cases have also been on the rise since cases have kind of shifted away from the older population into the younger population because of the vaccination schedule. Yeah. And so I completely understand that she is still considered low risk. And the chances of that happening to her are very low. But after seeing what our friends went through with their kid going through this, it's just hard to get past that when you see it firsthand.
I got you. Yeah.
Even though the numbers are what they are. So I guess for me, I'm still like, I'm not feeling anxiety about myself, even though I do have a little seed of the whole like immunocompromised people may not mount as robust of a reaction, and being pregnant, I am considered immunocompromised.
Yes.
But I still have confidence in the vaccine. So that's where my concern comes in. And I feel like the best decision for us right now, the way we're approaching it, and in a week, in a month, whatever, my attitude, my feelings might change.
Right.
But right now, I still feel like I want to limit her interaction to fully vaccinated adults.
I don't blame you.
Like and unvaccinated adults, yes, if they're wearing a mask. But then you have to be that awkward person who like singles out this one person or this one couple at a gathering or whatever to be the only ones wearing masks.
Right.
And then to have to like pay attention to that, or I don't want to say police it, but you know what I mean? Like have to remind them to put it on because they're probably going to forget when they're the only ones in the room wearing it.
I don't want to remind anyone.
I don't want to even
go
have
through
to.
that.
Exactly. I don't want to have to spend an ounce of my mental energy worrying about that right now. I've done that. I've done my part. I've worried the whole past 15 months or whatever it's been. I feel like we have done our part in terms of following the guidelines and following the recommendations. I kind of feel like this is our time to be able to relax and enjoy our time with our friends and family and allow our child to enjoy that time that she's missed without any level of anxiety. And that's the only way that I can do that.
I don't blame you. And again, even though I don't think the risk is that high, I don't want to set that sort of precedent because then it bleeds into things like, hey, let's go inside. Hey, it's not a big deal out here. Like,
yeah,
I have my general sense of comfort when it comes to things and my personal evaluation or risk assessment when it comes to the environment this happens. But I know that if you give an inch, people are going to take a mile. Right. So if I say, hey, unvaccinated person, let's all go outside and play with your kids and my kids and we'll do a thing. I'm not necessarily worried about transmission because we're going to be outside, but I just want to stay outside. Sure, no problem. And then, it's raining. What are we doing? You know, Are we taking this inside? No? Well, I guess you got to go home. Like it makes for a weird thing. And I know that's a very specific example where I have to worry about the weather, but it's small things like our child insisting on going inside just because. Right. And then people are like, let's just bring it inside.
Or like it's hot or whatever. Yeah. Like I just feel like we've been through that song and dance this whole time of having to be so aware and so like on in every social situation or just being around other people that I just don't want that. Right. Like I can't take it. Like I can't handle that it's exhausting to be monitoring those things and then to also have to be the person to be like you feel like the asshole even though you're not, to say sorry, it's raining and I don't feel comfortable being indoors, so you have to leave. Like, who wants to do that to someone that they care about? Right.
And every parent is going to have their different, risk tolerance. And for me, it's these things that you were mentioning before about like dance classes or, places to go. On the one hand, I'm glad this is happening. These mandates are for fully vaccinated people, even though we know unvaccinated people are going to follow suit, are happening in the summer for reasons we've discussed already. But, when it comes to indoor things, for us, it's easy. For extracurricular things, we can say just you're not doing them, and our child's none the wiser anyways, whatever. She's 2. But when it comes to things like, older people or older kids and like, we have to go to the store. For me, it is rough if your child can't be vaccinated yet, but my personal opinion of it, even if you are vaccinated, toss on a mask with them.
Yes.
Because then they're not on an island.
Exactly. You're not isolating them because they're going to see a lot of unmasked people.
Right.
And I think a lot of kids, including her, are used to wearing masks now because they do it at school. And she wears a mask at daycare, even though she's not even 3. And if I have to go somewhere with her, even if I don't have to, as a vaccinated person, I'll wear a mask just to demonstrate it to her. And it's hard enough to get a child her age or a toddler to wear a mask. And if they're the only ones who are being asked to do that, it's going to
Right.
be next to impossible.
Right. And, you know, the common theme here, or the people that are listening might be screaming at us right now. You won't let your kids around unvaccinated adults, but you'll let them around unvaccinated kids. Yes.
Well, there are criteria.
So long as their parents are vaccinated, right? So, yes, we understand there's a risk involved in that sort of template plan, but we also know that we can't have her not associate with other children.
And
right?
she has a sibling on the way in September. So I want her to this summer really interact with other kids and get used to not being the center of the universe, because she's been like pretty isolated just with us and became very attached to me over the last year. And I feel like her having the opportunity to socialize more, granted she gets it at daycare a few days a week, but still, like, I feel like in a more informal play date sort of setting is going to be beneficial to our transition to having another child.
Well, our risk, therefore, is not zero. It's actually very far from zero, because she's around other children in daycare, and being 2 years old, I don't know how often they wear the mask. I don't know how well they wear it. I don't know about what other kids are doing and where their parents
they do their
are
best
at.
Teachers do their best with it.
I
We
get
know
it.
it's not 100%.
But we also know that if we're going to associate with, other parents that are vaccinated and have children that obviously aren't, I personally am not dead set on limiting those to outdoors. If it happens to come inside, it's inside. I'm not worried about that.
I think our goal should be outdoors.
Of course, but I'm saying if the rain example happens and we're inside, I'm not freaking out about it.
I would probably want them to put masks on.
Okay.
Especially for the friends that we have who have kids who aren't in daycare, I would want to protect them from her.
That's up to them.
I agree. I understand that, but I'm not just looking out for me. I care about my friends' kids too.
But if our friends are saying out loud, it's not necessary.
I understand. I know that. I'm just saying, generally speaking, that's my initial reaction to that.
I feel you.
Right now, that's the game plan. Interacting with families who have fully vaccinated adults in the household, and allowing for interaction primarily outdoors, and not requiring the kids to wear masks while they're playing outside in the middle of the summer.
Yeah. And I can see how this is going to be difficult when it comes to like taking your kid to the zoo or taking your
they
kid.
still have to wear masks at the zoo.
I get it, but that's why I'm encouraging, I guess loosely here. I don't want to tell anyone how to parent. If you want to parent your own way, obviously do that. It's been successful. But I would advise personally to toss on a mask for your kids so they're not isolated, even in those outdoor settings, right? Because maybe there's going to be a time where the progression of this has been so rapid that I gave the example Wednesday. I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they lift these mask mandates. I wouldn't be surprised if they say no one has to wear a mask outdoors. No one. I would not be surprised if that happens by 4th of July. Would not shock me.
Oh, maybe, by 4th of July, but I feel like that has been the goal. Like Biden said that a couple of months ago, that he was saying.
He wanted, I think, 70%.
That's
or
a
200
recent
million.
That's a. I
Fully
think we've already
vaccinated.
reached 200
Did we?
million. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Never mind.
Or that's the next goal, because we reached the 100 million.
Yes.
Very quickly.
Yes.
But whatever. Yeah. He had been saying, like, once the vaccine started to roll out, that hopefully by the 4th of July, you can imagine yourself having a normal 4th of July party, cookout,
it would not
whatever.
surprise me.
Right. And I agree with you, but that I've been expecting that. I wasn't expecting in the middle of May to all of a sudden, literally the next day, I went to the grocery store and half the people were not wearing masks.
Yeah.
And our state had not changed our mask mandate. We still have a mask mandate as
Until
of
Tuesday.
Yes, but at that time, the day after the CDC released that recommendation, nothing had changed with our local government or our local businesses, and people just took it upon themselves to say, fuck it, I'm not wearing a mask.
I I hear you, but it's just like anything else. We always say when we're defending the case, we say the CDC says.
I understand that, but my point is that I wasn't ready for it to happen like that.
I get
like,
it.
I was expecting, by 4th of July we'll have some we'll ease into it. We'll be really close, if not sort of past that, what we think is the herd immunity threshold. Cases will be so low that there's no reason to feel like your unvaccinated kids are at risk. I could see that happening for 4th of July, and I was prepared to ease into that transition. And I feel like with this recommendation that just kind of came out of nowhere, it was very sudden, and people are taking it upon themselves to interpret this recommendation as a new permission to basically say COVID's over.
Yeah, that's what I said. But I also think that whether you're vaccinated or not, I'm giving 4th of July as a sort of long Hail Mary here. It would not shock me if it was sooner than that.
Yeah, maybe not.
Just because of how rapid things are going.
Well, and more people have to continue to get vaccinated. And that's where I also have that frustration that it seems like the CDC, or just maybe it wasn't them specifically, but in general, it seems like they're having trouble getting people to get the vaccine at this point. We have more supply than we have demand. That's the story.
Right. They
cannot get people to come. They're closing vaccine clinics.
I understand.
So for me, I'm okay, that if we're that challenged to continue to get the threshold that we need and the population vaccinated, how can we also kind of give this signal that we're good?
Yeah.
At the same time.
I don't know. I look, I feel for those that, you have to bring your kids to the grocery store, especially if you don't have any transportation of your own that you can do sort of curbside pickup. If you're taking public transportation, right, and you have to bring your child, and
which masks are still required in that setting,
and you have to go into the grocery store and whatnot to pick up your groceries and shop. I feel for you. I don't have a solution. The only solution I can give to you, if you're worried about your child's well-being, toss on a mask with your child, whether you're vaccinated or not. If you're not worried about it at all, that's your own personal risk assessment, and you can, do as you please. But if you do have some sort of transportation and you're worried about bringing your child into these environments, I've been in love with curbside pickup when it comes to our groceries. Even when the herd
I know it's
immunity,
kind of tempting to keep doing
I'm just going to still do it.
Well, especially once I have the new baby and stuff, rather than wrangling two kids out of car seats and getting them set up in a carriage and all that, yeah.
It's just easier.
I know.
Just drop off the groceries into the back seat of the car.
It is very convenient.
Yeah. And I would imagine, assuming your grocery store allows for that or does that, ours does. Shout out to Stop and Shop. I can't see them getting rid of that.
Oh, no. I think there's a lot of things that are going to stay.
Yeah.
The way that services have adapted to the pandemic that are very convenient, yeah.
So if you're, I guess chalk it up to laziness at that point, when the pandemic's over, I still want them to do my grocery shopping for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can pick out my produce.
It is, yeah. It is pretty lazy. I do feel that way now. I'm I'm fully vaccinated now. I could go back to my normal grocery shopping.
No, fuck that.
But that's also again, I don't want to bring my kid. And in a few months, I'm also going to have a newborn that I'm not going to want to bring with me.
No.
And it's for people who have young kids, I think, or, obviously people who are elderly or whatever, who it's difficult to get around. I feel like that's a totally legit service to take advantage of.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're a young, healthy, able-bodied person, not trying to drag two tiny humans with you, it's kind of, then it's just pure laziness.
No, but it's also new forms of convenience, right?
Yeah.
If the service is offered, take advantage of the service.
Sure.
Yeah.
But outside of really tight quarters, I wouldn't be comfortable taking my child. I don't feel comfortable doing this in general. But even now, compounded with this, I don't feel comfortable taking my child to a public pool. I'd be weirded out by that because kids tend to cluster into those situations and there's not a lot of space to maneuver.
Right.
But when it comes to a zoo, you can maneuver your child away from large groups, and there are sort of getaway spaces to sort of, get away from large groups of people.
Yeah.
So that in those kinds of settings, outdoor zoos or playgrounds and stuff, I don't necessarily think a mask is necessary for a child outdoors. But if, the CDC is saying to continue to do this, we'll certainly honor that.
Right.
It's just there is some conflicting, messaging when they're saying outdoors near zero.
No, I get it. I've been frustrated with the CDC's messaging several times throughout this whole thing. Like, I know
they're
it's
just
difficult.
operating on the safe side.
Yeah,
right? Because
they have to.
Just because it's near zero doesn't mean it's zero.
Right.
It's still possible, but I think you have to, from what I've read, and I think Brown University actually released the study. Shout out to Brown University in Providence. Like, you have to try to get it in outdoor settings.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is still just the unknowns of how transmissible the variants really are. If new variants are going to pop up as a result of the level of people not getting vaccinated. I mean, I don't know. That's some of my concerns.
I just think this is good news. I think it's a sign that normalcy is on the horizon.
Yeah, because I think for me, so I think the approach we're kind of taking in summary is like creating our own herd immunity in our circle. Like,
sure, yes.
By saying we're only going to interact with other we're only going to allow our child to interact with other fully vaccinated adults.
Yes. And
children of parents who are fully vaccinated. Recognizing that doesn't mean the risk is zero, but we feel like that's a reasonable minimization of the risk, and the benefit of those types of interactions outweigh the level of risk.
Yeah.
And by only having the only people in the group that we're interacting with be children who can't be vaccinated, a handful of kids, and all of the other adults, all the other people being that they're adults who are fully vaccinated, sort of creates this herd immunity situation within our group.
Yeah.
Within our circle. And I think we'll move on from that pretty soon too, assuming that there's not some like a fourth wave, there's not some new variant that comes and fucks everything up. Like, assuming that we continue on this trajectory, I can definitely see us getting to a point of herd immunity on a community level or a state level within the next few months. I hope so. And we can change course at that point. But I'm saying right now, that's the way that we're approaching it.
We so far we've been operating, trusting the CDC and following their guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
I am personally not going to, misdirect from that. I'm still going to follow their guidelines. And if that means our child still has to wear a mask in certain settings, fine. All settings, fine. I just think the messaging is kind of silly, because you have science-based research saying it's near zero, but at the same time, I get it. It's just, to me, it's silly. It's just a personal frustration with it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean I'm anti-science or I don't trust the science.
Well, it's kind of like
it's frustrating.
Personal frustration with, if they truly think this is safe to allow fully vaccinated people to not have to wear a mask in essentially any situation, knowing everybody with a brain knows that there's going to be unvaccinated people who don't wear a mask. If they're confident that that's still a safe recommendation to make, tell me that. So I'm not so anxious. So I'm not so worried about my kid or myself who's immunocompromised, whatever. Like, why aren't they messaging that to us so that those of us who have been doing our part and following the guidelines all this time can return to normalcy and without the anxiety of saying, oh, but you're still saying that unvaccinated people should wear a mask, but we know that they're not. So what does that mean? Yeah. Like, that's my frustration too. But I think the answer to my own question is they're trying to incentivize people to get vaccinated.
Yes. Yeah. Leaving a little extra there.
Yeah.
For you to keep guessing, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they like to see
Neither
us
of us
sweat.
are experts in any of this. We don't work in public health. We're just parents trying to navigate this whole situation.
Yeah, we're probably vocalizing a lot of the
average thought process of parents like us. Yeah.
Or maybe not. I'm stupid.
I'm saying people
probably,
yeah.
People are probably like, this guy's dumb. All right. Well, look.
We had a little trouble with the math in the beginning, but we got through it.
25%. All right, look, we're 25% done. No, we're fully done. If you have any concerns or you have any input that you'd like to share with us when it comes to how you're dealing with now this lifting of the mask mandate for vaccinated people, and if you have any sort of anxieties when it comes to this, please feel free to share them with us so we can discuss it. We don't want to feel like we're alone in this. Maybe we are.
Right, and we know that there are going to be things that we're overlooking or not considering, or certain insights that we don't have, so we're open to hear it all.
Maybe if you're a parent and you are sort of juggling with these things and how you're going to handle it with your kid, we're in a unique position where we can relate to you, and maybe we can you can share something with us that we haven't considered, and
there's a lot of complexities, and it's unique to everyone's situation.
Having said that, we appreciate listening. If you'd like what you've heard, you can subscribe. I promise we don't talk about COVID and shit like that every week.
Yeah, this just came out. I mean, this just kind of slapped us right in the face on Thursday. We were like, oh, okay. I guess this is what we'll talk about.
We'll get to the best cereal polls.
Oh my God.
Very soon.
Keep teasing that. Nobody cares.
You'd be surprised. People fight over cereals.
Okay.
We'll see.
I'm not one of those people.
You'll see. It's going to be the most listened to episode ever.
Okay.
Having said that, if you want to get in touch with us, you can by checking out our social medias.
We're on Facebook at facebook.com/whileshe'snapping, on Instagram at whileshe'snapping, or on Twitter at she'snappingpod, or you can email us at whileshe'snapping@gmail.com.
Subscribe on your favorite podcatcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast fix from. Please subscribe to us. Give us a 5-star and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. We'd appreciate it. And until next week, stay safe and peace.
Bye.